You're muted. I think you're muted still, Dane.
Welcome to Inside Vaping, your weekly resource for vaping news when I'm not muted. Our show airs live on Tuesday nights from 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time, of course, via this very YouTube live stream at www.youtube.com/InsideVaping. As those of you don't know, and some of you don't, our show consists of two distinct segments. The first hour streaming right here on good old YouTube. The second uncensored hour of the show airs exclusively on the Quest Vaping Network at www.vapors.tv/questvaping. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and I will introduce my wonderful co-hosts. Let's start first with Mr. James Martin. Uncle Dagger, how are you this week, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. I am not a sir. Let's get that straight. I mean, I am, I guess, gender-wise, but I have not been knighted.
I wasn't going to call you ma'am.
Title-wise. I'm doing pretty good. It was kind of a slow vape mail week for me. I did get some stuff for one of my Australian friends who I am providing courier service for. He bought a very nice pipe here. It's a very nice hand-carved pipe.
Very snazzy.
Yeah. And that's pretty nice. I did get a tank for my Aspire Nautilus. This is a full-size Nautilus tank. And this is kind of a throwback here. I'm actually using a Praveri.
I was very surprised to see that this week. I don't think I've ever seen you use a Praveri.
It's kind of a rarity, I will say that. So what's new, Ed? What's new with you?
We have phones.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. There's a funny story behind that, yes, too.
Phones are sponsored by Uncle Dagger.
Yes, apparently I unwittingly signed up for an auto-subscribe service to the phones. I figured we'd try it out for a month, so we're going to have to utilize these things at some point.
Yes, so nobody call in, and it'll drive him nuts.
Speaking of phone lines, here we have the phone line number, so go ahead and call in if you have any questions or if you would like to participate in the program. And Ed will be our lovely call screener for this evening, so definitely avail yourself of that.
I'm in India.
I want to welcome him back from his wandering the eastern seaboard of the United States.
That's true.
Yes, I was in Rock Hill, South Carolina for advanced dryer training, which consumed of refrigerated dryers, desiccant, and many more. All provided by my company that sends me and flies me around the country to learn stuff.
I see we have a new sponsor, too. I don't know if that's actually an official sponsor, but I see you have a snazzy background there.
Yes. This is Atomic Vapors. I stole their banner from VaporCon. I stole it.
Pilfered it.
Inside Vaping assumes no liability for said theft, and we will deny all allegations.
Yeah, actually,
just putting that out there.
It was like Saturday, and everything was cleared out. We're all hanging around, and then I'm like, Jeff, you left your banner up. He goes, it was free. I'm like, all right. So I took it. I think he was going to leave it there anyway. So, but yeah, I was in South Carolina for training. The weather was much warmer than it is here now. It was a beautiful, warm 17 degrees today.
It's horrible. I'll tell you what, I'm one of these guys that runs around in like shorts until basically December.
Yeah, you run.
I've now resorted to wearing jeans and several layers of clothing. So got my hairs cut today. Look at that.
Yeah, I won't mention what the weather was here. So
it was warmer.
I want to know. I want to know, what was the weather like there, Dane?
I don't want to rub that in, but it was 75 degrees here today. It was a little chilly. And
poor Buffalo, New York just got dumped on, man.
Yeah, I felt so bad for them. I saw that snow, and that is just unbelievable.
Why would you feel bad for them? They can move.
But it'll overcrowd my city then. And I don't want to do that. I wanted to kick off the show this week and have a chat with our viewers and our listeners. Every now and then here at Inside Vaping, when we do pre-show meetings and things like that, we have a lot of videos and a lot of news stories to sift through. it makes it easier on all of us here when we kind of use a centralized location so we don't have to keep shooting links around and things like that. We use the same account over on YouTube. I went on YouTube today and I was stunned by what I found.
Oh, man.
I know that I didn't watch these videos that were on YouTube.
Yeah.
And so I started to play through the history list that was in there. There was a girl twerking who defecated herself.
She was wearing pants. Let's get this clear here, okay? She was wearing pants. So Dane wanted me to show everybody the YouTube history. Unfortunately, I did not switch accounts before I perused YouTube for funny and amusing videos. So, we have the pug dog that sounds like a diesel engine, which is a classic. It's very funny, and I don't regret viewing that at all.
All right, I will say I got the poo on me is mine.
Yes, that is definitely yours.
Yeah, that one's mine. But we also learned a very important thing today. We learned what Dagger wants for Christmas. So if his wife is listening, he wants a moto watch. Because I asked, this is how I found out it was him. I said, hey, Dagger, are you in the market for a moto watch? And he got very surprised and a little taken aback and said, why, yeah, how do you know that? I said, you want to know how I know that? Because you've been looking through the videos on YouTube about the moto watch. So then I knew that they were his, and I had to have him explain about the defecation video and the pug dog.
I'm just saying, like, there's some other stuff in there, like the shiwi. That was just simply trying to inform somebody who wanted to know, as a woman, how they could paint snow angels.
Well, the Go Girl caught me by surprise.
Yeah.
At first I didn't know you to be a prepper, and that girl in that video had to be like, what, 12?
I don't know. She did a very detailed product review, and it looks like a great product. So
she even shook it off at the end, which I found very interesting.
She did. Yes, but enough joking aside here. The 50 Shades of Grey trailer, I can explain that one as well. My wife definitely wants to see that. So that
your
is
man card is revoked. It has been revoked since yesterday.
It was revoked a long time ago, buddy. I think it was.
We Ed and I are stunned. We're just stunned. We don't know what to think of that.
Yeah. I already bought tickets.
Did you?
There you go. See, Ed's in my corner with this one.
Did you buy tickets for you and Dagger?
Yeah, so we can learn something.
Yeah, we're not going together, Ed.
It's an educational
That's not
video.
happening.
Well, it's okay, Dane. Our stuff still works.
All right, so
it's true. When you get old, you don't have to worry about it.
We need to give everybody an update on the mod giveaway. And the way we're going to handle it is we're going to do a YouTube video separately with a drawing, and it's going to be via random.org with all the names, so you can see the names. You can see when we go ahead and upload the video who won that video contest. Unfortunately, the wood boxes, which I'll go ahead and flip to the screen, they are still not here. I have quite a bit of money wrapped up in this buy. I purchased several of them, and they are still not here, so we are not going to be giving away a parallel wood box. Instead,
all screwed now.
Instead, Ed has graciously donated a spider to the cause, so we are giving away a DNA 30 spider.
Yeah.
It's dual 18650s, and I think he's got it right there.
Yeah, here's the first one I ever built.
There you go.
There it is.
So you are going to get a spider like that, not that exact one, but
yeah, I post all the pictures of the ones I have available on my Facebook group. So when the contest gets announced and the winner gets announced, then they can go over there and pick which one they want of what I have available.
That is fantastic. Thank you, Ed TheGreen, for that really generous
Thank
giveaways.
you very much, Ed. And we're actually going to introduce our special guest for the evening, and that would be Neil Helland. And Neil, we're delighted to have you with us tonight. And thank you for being part of the show. And I'll just give you a little introduction here. I'm pleased to introduce our special guest for the evening, Mr. Neil Helland. And Neil is one of these guys, he's a great guy. He's the renowned author of intergalactic best-selling book, Just an Okie from Okefenokee. He holds the title of 3 UFC Ultimate Feather Dusting Championship titles, and he was named Man of the Year by Cat Fancy magazine in 2003.
That's impressive.
Yes. An impressive list of accomplishments from Mr. Neil Helland. Now, folks, all kidding aside, I've known Neil for almost 3 years now, and I think we've both been vaping for right around 3 years. Isn't that correct, Neil?
Yeah, it's been about 3 years. I've met you through the first buy for the Air. That was the first time we actually started talking a lot more.
Yeah, and that buy was a nightmare. We can kind of discuss that a little bit later here, but Neil, he's an all-around good guy. He currently runs an excellent little liquid line called Guru E-Juice, and he also works for OKC Vapes as a mod and tech specialist. And there you go. There, he's got one of the bottles held up right now. Really distinctive, really distinctive bottle design on that too, Neil. I really do like that. And
I definitely tried to be a little bit unique on that style.
Yeah. So we're going to talk to Neil a little bit later in the show, ask him some questions, and of course have him weigh in on our discussion here. But first I want to talk to you a little bit about Vape Summit, because you did attend that. That was the weekend of November 7th, I believe. And everything I heard from attendees was very complimentary. It sounds like they put on a great show. What were your impressions of the event?
Well, I was there actually for Friday for the first day for the business day, where there was no customers, there was no retail going on, which was a really nice, for me, it's a nice setup so I can actually focus and actually talk to vendors on that basis. Where if you have customers bouncing around, it's really hard to discuss with people, what you're there for, what you're trying to look for, trying out new things and seeing the new products that they have. When you have customers in your way, you can't actually focus as well.
Right.
So, I mean, that to me was a real big step. And I liked the setup. I mean, they had it easily enough where you can walk down each aisle. You didn't have nobody in the way. And then let alone when you come back, you got crossways on top of that. So there was 166,000 square feet, I think.
Holy
they said.
Cow.
So, I mean, it was a very huge event.
Is it safe to say that event had more of a trade show type feel?
I would say it was more trade show style. It was more like that.
Yeah. Now, Rocky Anciano, one of the event organizers, was on Dimitri's show, Smoke Free Radio, a few weeks ago, and he mentioned something very intriguing. Apparently there was also a car show going on in the same event area that very weekend. The group that organized the car show was called Hot Import Nights, I believe. And the great thing about that cross-promotion was that it introduced a whole new audience to the vaping industry and probably increased exposure to a demographic which may not have been familiar with these products. Were there a lot of cool cars there, Neil?
Yeah, there was a lot. It was more based on the tuner style cars, the lower stance cars. It was more, the newer generation that are more into the imports and stuff. Right. And a lot of them were explaining to people that were checking out the cars, look, the reason why we vape and why we're associated with these people is we don't want the smell in our cars no more. And that was kind of a draw for them to say, hey, if they're not smoking in their car, maybe that's a better solution.
Yeah, and I can definitely sympathize, because I know if you put that kind of money into a vehicle, and let's face it, even though these cars may start out as a relatively tame, Japanese car or a tuner vehicle, it turns into something completely different with a huge amount of money invested in it. So I definitely can see where they're coming from with that.
There was definitely some impressive cars, I will say that.
Was there a designated area for the cars, or were they kind of interspersed all over the show floor?
Well, to get to the cars, you actually had to go through the whole show and then get to the actual cars.
Okay.
So they were on the actual backside of the show, so it didn't take away from the actual vaping industry itself.
Okay. Were they allowing any kind of vaping in the car show area, or was it restricted to just the main
No, I was vaping all through looking at the cars myself, and I
Okay.
never was told not to. So
Yeah. Well, that's refreshing. Well, I think it's safe to assume that you had an awesome time. Hopefully, I'll be able to visit the great state of Texas again sometime soon. I always enjoy the time that I can spend there.
yeah, it was definitely a blast. I mean, it was a very enjoyable time. It was one of the bigger shows I've ever been to. I can say that.
Very cool. So, Dane, I think we've got our first story here now.
We do, and I'm sure as many have seen all over the internet and even on local news broadcasts and national news broadcasts, Oxford Dictionary's word of the year was vape.
Woohoo!
Absolutely. It was fantastic. I was surprised. I didn't expect it to be vape. I thought it would be something social media related or something completely different, but it was vape.
And I got to say, you know, this is so much better of a word than last year's, which was selfie. So
Yeah. I agree.
I might be
They
biased, though.
explained why they did it. And I found it interesting. They said that the choice reflects the growing popularity of electronic cigarettes. Increasingly, you see them on the street, but they also have their own vape lounges and are even allowed in some offices. Just not here. Vape can be used as both a verb or a noun. It is more than doubled in 2014 over the previous year, according to the Oxford Dictionary's editor's research. A gap emerged in the lexicon as a word was needed to describe this activity and distinguish it from smoking, Oxford said in their news release. The word vape arose to fill this gap, and it was proliferated along with the habit. The word originated as an abbreviation of vapor or vaporize, and OxfordDictionaries.com added the definition this past August. The verb means to inhale and exhale the vapor produced by an electronic cigarette or similar device, while the noun refers to just the device. We are very proud that we are now, I think we can now consider ourselves like quasi-mainstream now with this.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's been a long time coming, too, because if you think about how long people have been using the term,
Yeah.
you know, this just makes sense. It really does, especially considering that we're now like, what, a $3.7 billion industry?
Right,
You know,
exactly.
it makes a lot of sense. Let's talk a little bit about what vape beat out. So basically, vape beat out bae, B-A-E, a term of endearment for a romantic partner.
I didn't get that at all.
It beat out bud tender. Now, this is a new one for me. Apparently, a bud tender is someone who serves customers in a cannabis shop. So that was a contender also for the 2014 title. Others on the short list, okay? Others on the short list include normcore, a fashion trend that favors the ordinary, which I believe is actually what Ed TheGreen subscribes to. It's the ordinary fashion trend there.
Yeah, with a t-shirt on. That's
Also, slacktivism, taking up a political or social cause with very little involvement, like signing an online petition. I'm pretty sure Dimitri had something to do with that one, because I know that was one of his favorite words for a while there.
Yeah, it sure was.
Yeah. We all know that one well.
And we're all inundated with plenty of online petitions as well. So the next thing we have up here is the Pioneer for You IPV Mini 30-watt variable voltage box mod was announced.
That was a mouthful.
Yes, I know, that is a mouthful. So let's take a look at this screenshot here. We have the IPV Mini, and these are the only pictures I was able to find of this thing. There was a video floating around somewhere. But basically, it is like an iStick, just a little bit bigger. It goes from 5 to 30 watts. The acceptable ohm range is 0.5 to 3 ohms. Okay, there's a front-on picture. So not particularly visually distinctive. I almost prefer the what is it? The iStick. The iStick. I almost prefer the iStick to it.
I will say one thing though.
Yeah.
If they made it 22 millimeter, and click back to that one picture where it actually shows the
It actually is a 22.
It is 22?
The rounded part is by the atomizer now.
Right.
So
I
it's
actually
That's
talked
true.
to these guys. It is a 22 millimeter.
Yeah.
that is actually probably going to make your 22 millimeter atomizers look a lot better
Well,
than.
The best thing about this, in my opinion, is the fact that it's got a user serviceable battery. So you're no longer limited to an internal LiPo pack. You're using a standard 18650. It comes with an 1800 mAh 18650, which that seems a little bit low compared to, most modern batteries. They've got a little bit higher capacity than that. It uses a Yeehy SX130 chip. It comes with the device, a USB cable, and a 510 Ego adapter, and I believe MSRP is supposed to be around $49. So it's relatively competitively priced in relation to the iStick. So, that may end up taking off.
It's yeah.
I
think the only thing that sets it apart really is the price.
Yeah.
And this is what I got to say about the iStick and all these devices coming out. If you look at the ZNA, like the Zen, they all have the switches all on the same side.
Yeah.
They're all starting to mimic the same style.
Yeah. And also, of course, it does pay homage to the Vapor Shark a little bit in form factor, at least in my mind.
Yep.
Just with that size. Now, I've become a fan of the iStick, and I see the iStick continuing to sell well. I think it's going to be a combination of that reasonable pricing, and I expect the price to drop a little bit with this type of competition and the diminutive size. I mean, let's face it, I'm just not aware of too many mods that are smaller than this thing. It's barely bigger than a lighter. It has a niche. The fact that the IPV Mini is 30 watts, that doesn't really matter to me as much, since most of the time I'm topping these things with a little bottom-fed tank system. I'm not running a rebuildable dripper on it typically, so I'm not really using it at 30 watts. Most of the time I'm going to be vaping at maybe 12 to 15 watts because these little bottom coils, they're so efficient that you get a nice warm saturated vape off of them at a lower wattage. You don't really need to go higher than that. Now,
And something to add to that too, if it is the SX chip, now you're talking about not using the means setting anymore. You're looking at the actual RMS. So when you set it for 12 watts, it's going to be 12 watts.
That's true. And from talking to Jeannie last week, I know you weren't here, Ed, but we did talk about the iSticks a little bit because she likes hers.
Yes.
But she had a problem, and a lot of people did. It's not accurate. Basically, everything seems hotter than what it said. Yeah,
it's way up.
It's pretty.
Phil Busardo did a great video on that.
Yeah.
You can sit through 45 minutes of video.
I'll have to have you give me the summarized version of it. So the next thing we have up here, well, let's get your impressions first, Neil, because I know you guys have sold a lot of these over at OKC Vapes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing of it is we still sell Vamos. I mean, the two mods were still going good, but I really think the iStick itself is going to take over the MVPs here, and the MVPs are pretty much a dinosaur. Mm-hmm. But with the Pioneer coming out, I mean, it's going to be a competitive edge.
Yeah.
You think about, you're running the iStick, which is not a replaceable battery. So if this dies, you got to get it on a charger. If you're not near a charger, the Pioneer is going to take its place very quickly.
Right.
That's going to be the edge of that market.
Yeah, that's true.
Let alone then, like, Ed said, the form factor, if it's not a 22 and you put a 22 on there, it's not going to sit correctly.
Yeah.
For us guys and the people that are looking for the aesthetics of a mod, it might not be the same. So I think it's going to be a niche market. Most females are going to like it because it's smaller, it's form-fitting to their hand, and that's why I see a lot of
That's what I was just going to say, because when I was at Vape Expo in Michigan, a friend of mine was there, and she was in the market for a mod. She was trying to quit smoking again. She had vaped before and kind of, fallen off the bandwagon, and she ended up picking up an original Vapor Shark, even though I did recommend that she get the RDNA, the replaceable battery version, and that was simply a matter of size, because she liked the fact that it was a little bit smaller. So I do think this is going to appeal to people who are looking for the absolute smallest stealth vape possible. That being said, I'm going to keep using mine, because I really do like it. I mean,
I use a rebuild on mine all the time. So, I don't run many beginner tanks.
And you actually have a dripper on there. That's a pretty old one, too.
That's a fatty. That's kind of outdated, but I like it still. It works rock solid for this.
Yeah. Okay, so the next thing that we have up here is we have custom battery wraps. Now, really...
real quick, James, we do have a caller from the 612 area code.
We do. 612. And this person has been screened properly and put through a vetting process?
Yes, I believe it is the correspondent and gentleman from Minnesota.
Excellent. Okay, so let's go ahead and bring him on now. Basil, are you there?
Hey. I am. How are we doing?
Pretty good. How are you tonight?
I am coming down. It's been a rough 24-hour stretch for us folks here in Minnesota.
Yeah. And we actually didn't even get to that news story yet, so maybe you can kind of summarize what's going on there. We did want to talk to you because there were 2 hearings in Minnesota, correct? There was one in Minneapolis, correct. And then there was the other one was held in Bloomington. Were you at both hearings?
Yep. And for those, I was at both hearings. I didn't actually speak at either. And for those who might be wondering what is or where is Bloomington, Bloomington is actually where the airport as well as the Mall of America are located here in Minnesota.
Yeah. Well, I know you've been an extremely busy guy lately, so thanks for taking the time to call in. Tell us a little bit about the hearings and basically what they were bringing to the table.
Yeah, so both cities had fairly similar kind of ordinances up for vote. And in Minnesota, we have the Clean Indoor Air Act at the state level, which was passed, I want to say, took effect in 2007. And really all that did, clean indoor air is kind of a misnomer for this one. It really just means smoke-free air. So you're not allowed to smoke really in any public space in the state of Minnesota. The city of Minneapolis was up first, so that meeting was at around 1:30 in the afternoon, and it was packed out. It was standing room only. So there were a lot of people from the Minnesota Vapors advocacy groups, and actually Greg Connolly flew in to speak there. And it was about what you would expect. I mean, the city council really seemed to kind of have their mind made up before I got into the room. So after about an hour's worth of testimony, ranging from physical therapists / bakery workers. There was one who was a physician's assistant or something, and also supposedly owned or was a server at a bakery who was very concerned, as you can imagine, very concerned. To an OBGYN, to doctors, both retired and otherwise. Testimony was met by the likes of Greg Connolly and Jason Downing here from Minnesota. Gave some really nice testimony. It passed there. So in Minneapolis, it was really just the kind of health and health services committee. So nothing is passed officially yet in Minneapolis, but it really is kind of on its way.
And they vote on that, I believe.
That one is at.
That's December 5th, correct?
That sounds right. Yeah, okay. I know it's early December. I don't know if the 5th is the exact day or not, but that sounds right.
Okay.
The interesting one about Minneapolis is that they did not opt to write in any special provisioning or go back and rewrite that proposal to work around sampling within vape shops. However, they supposedly will have to get a proposal, and someone will bring a proposal to the table that would then go back and allow them to make an exception for vaping as part of their tobacco sampling legislation or ordinance, if you will.
Okay.
They also claimed that they will make no attempts and there will be no enforcement of sampling bans in Minneapolis. Now, it's a slippery slope because they can say that all day long, but that really won't be the letter of the law once this passes until they go back and they update that sampling ban or that sampling ordinance. So that one was tough to swallow, but it was interesting. Phyllis Kahn, who anyone who's followed kind of the legislative process in Minnesota that we went through here in the last year knows that she is a big proponent of, she's really on the side of the anti-tobacco folks, like the staunch, anti-tobacco, anti-nicotine everywhere. And even she kind of came to the realization that it didn't make sense to deny sampling in these stores.
Right.
She really just wanted it out of public space.
Yeah.
Then last night, the Bloomington City Council meeting was, it was quite the debacle. There were about, I would guess 60 vapors that showed up.
Mm-hmm.
So the City Council room was packed, and it's a pretty large room. It was actually about double the size of the room in Minneapolis. The meeting started at 7 p.m., and they did some regular meeting business for the first half hour, 45 minutes, by a really heated and spiritual talk about right turn lanes in the suburbs. Which it was interesting. At one point, a gentleman who lives in Bloomington invited the mayor to come sit in his bedroom at 3 a.m. during the summertime on a Saturday night and listen to the crotch rockets that buzz by. He declined. He declined the offer respectfully. That was followed up by about a 90-minute discussion on electronic billboard and signage around the Mall of America.
Wow.
They opted to have that discussion knowing that 70-plus people were sitting in the room waiting for the final agenda item of the night. So it was roughly 10:30 when they actually moved to the agenda item, which was very similar to Minneapolis in that they wanted to expand their kind of take on the Clean Indoor Air Act in Minnesota to include electronic cigarettes. They were also looking to include sampling in vape shops as part of that, as well as regulating that tiny cigars have to be sold in packs of 5 so that kids can't buy them. I mean, never mind the fact that you can't buy them if you're under 18.
Right.
So, at any rate, they trotted out the same few folks from Clearway, which is a nonprofit organization here in Minnesota. It's actually funded by the tobacco settlement, and they are they're really the definition of ants, anti-Z ants, right? Anti-nicotine tobacco zealots. I mean, they are of the strongest order. They have no problems twisting and distorting not only facts but truth as well. They're pretty well funded and they're very well organized. They didn't take a lot of time to speak. There were probably only 6 or 7 people that spoke on behalf of that. After the first half an hour of deliberation, Greg Connolly was actually asked what was to stop someone from putting a chemical like bleach into a tank system and vaping it in public to cause harm to other people.
Wow.
So it was the first, I think, recorded questioning about weaponized vapes in a public hearing, which was groundbreaking in and of itself.
Yeah. Hopefully they don't. Hopefully the rest of the media doesn't latch onto that. I was going to ask you about the tone of the hearings. Were the board members at least receptive to your information, or were they pretty much already they made their minds up?
I think their minds were made up. There was one who. What's interesting too is that I didn't know this until this morning. One of the board members actually used to work for Clearway. Had I known that last night, I would have definitely jumped up and kind of made that point publicly and asked that she respectfully recuse herself from voting. It just would have been the right thing to do. I think that's a pretty clear conflict of interest to vote on that kind of legislation or ordinance, I guess, at the city level. So the owners of Smokeless Smoking, and if you're not familiar with them, they're a chain of brick and mortars here in Minnesota, and they're kind of one of the predominant vaping retailer powerhouses here in the state of Minnesota. Their flagship store is about 15 blocks from City Hall in Bloomington, maybe a little farther. At any rate, just over a year ago, they actually got the permit to expand what was their current location and really push forward a full-scale vape lounge. So it is a great place to go and sample and hang out. Really comfortable, really great environment, just clean, well kept, really friendly staff. The owners detailed, that they've got 25 full-time employees with retirement plans and 75%, employer paid health plans. I mean, it's really impressive what they've done and how they treat their staff and how respectful they've been of the city. At the end of the day, a big part of their fight was pushing them to take off the sampling part of the bill, to allow them to sample. They went into great details explaining how they work with their customers,
I think we just lost. Is Basil still there? I lost audio. Might just be on my end.
Difficulties.
Okay, we should be able to pick it back up here. It should start in just a second here.
There, we're back.
Okay, all right, we're back. So hopefully we didn't lose too much of that. My whole point
so let me
here,
know where to pick off.
I'm not really sure how much further back we lost audio here. We're going to reiterate the article, Basil, or iterate it. Basically, there's a good post from the AVA on this on the AVA's Facebook page, and the takeaway here, basically this statement: while Minneapolis politicians made it clear they would exempt vape shops, sadly Bloomington's politicians voted 5-2 against an amendment that would have allowed vaping in Bloomington's 2 existing vape stores. Customers seeking to sample products will now have to walk 25 feet from their doors in 0-degree temperatures. There's one word for this type of extreme ban, in my opinion, and that would be asinine. Basil, the thing that I don't understand is how myopic these council members in these cities are with ordinances like this, because do you think those businesses are going to stay open? Have you talked to them to find out what their intentions are?
Basil,
I haven't talked to Tim. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. No, I think it's, and no, I was getting some Skypes that there was problems with the YouTube.
Yeah, we're back.
Okay?
We're good.
All right, good. We're good. Go ahead.
We're cool? Okay. Yeah, I haven't talked to Tim or Jesse or Angie, kind of the triangle of ownership, really, since last night. When Tim, one of the part owners of Smokeless, spoke last night, he said, it might not end their business in Bloomington, but it's certainly going to cripple them. Mm-hmm. They're not going to have use for the 3,200 plus square feet of real estate that they rent out every month. I don't know what their game plan is really going to be. I don't think anybody really thought that the city council of Bloomington would be so short-sighted not to allow a responsible, reputable business to do business within the confines of their 4 walls. It kind of blows my mind. And if I were them, I would already be scouting places that they can expand. They have 3 or 4 other physical locations around the metro. Mm-hmm. The kicker is that just over a year ago, they went to the city council to get the permits to expand and to expand that space. And, they made a point of saying that, less than a year ago, you guys embraced it and you supported it, and now you're trying to take it away. It's mind-boggling that they expect that. At the end of the day, it was clear the whole evening that they were far more concerned about the potential revenue from electronic billboards around the Mall of America and what people driving by on the south side. It's not the South Loop, if you will, kind of that south side of the Mall of America. Yeah. A lot of new buildings and businesses that have gone up, restaurants and such, but it's not a residential area. Right. They were far more concerned and had a far more, I think, adult conversation around that and what that signage would look like and how these ads were going to work than they were willing to do with the ordinance around tobacco use last night. Yeah. It was just really disheartening.
Yeah, well, living in Northwest Indiana and being so close to Chicago, I'm definitely familiar with public use bans. To say it's exasperating is an understatement. It's something that I've learned to deal with, but nonetheless, it's kind of ludicrous that when you're in a public space and you're not surrounded by, a lot of people, you can't vape. Just not having that freedom, it's frustrating.
Basil, do you see any backlash from this? Do you think, I know here in Arizona, once one council sets a precedent like this, it tends to have a ripple effect across the rest of the state. Has there been murmurs or anything about any other municipalities adopting the same type of ordinance?
One of the neighboring suburbs to Bloomington, Eden Prairie, actually, I think had a sampling ban up for vote today. kind of inconsequential because right now there are no shops that operate in Eden Prairie. What's unfortunate is that would have been a prime suburb to have opened one. It's a pretty young suburb that's still kind of going under a lot of growth. There's a lot of money in Eden Prairie. Mm-hmm. So it takes that kind of business expansion off the table for Eden Prairie if that passed. And to be honest, I'm not sure that it did. I think there was another use ban in the county, at the county level, the county that I kind of grew up in. But again, that's pretty far outside the metro. What this is undoubtedly going to do once Minneapolis passes is that it's going to get kicked back into the session when legislation picks up here in the beginning of the year again in Minnesota. There's no way they won't try and pull this up again. Now, the one thing that happened is that we did have a bit of a changing of the guard, and I believe the House, I'm not sure about the Senate in Minnesota, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. I didn't follow it too closely, which is sad. I was really looking more at the national level, this midterm elections. Mm-hmm. But it's back in the control of Republicans. So I think we got a better shot at trying to fend off at least pieces of it this time at the state level, but I would be very surprised if it doesn't get introduced again.
Yeah.
And they'll use Minneapolis and Bloomington as shining examples of what the state needs to do. Sure. There's no way around that.
Well, I don't think I've ever seen a ban that was so draconian, like the fact that you can't sample juices inside a vape shop. Because normally, I mean, I know at least in the case of Santa Monica, I believe the vape shops in Santa Monica were allowed to, the ones that existed were grandfathered in.
Correct. Yeah, they were reintroduced into that legislation, not at first, but after it was initially proposed, they rewrote it to add existing vape shops in there.
Yeah, and fortunately, even with Crystal Lake, Illinois, and we're going to talk to Anthony a little bit later here about that, with Crystal Lake, Illinois, they passed an amendment to their resolution to allow vape shops to, basically allow vaping in vape shops and allow people to sample juices. So, I don't know. This is kind of disheartening. Do you think you have any recourse at this point? Or is that pretty much...
I don't know. I mean, yeah, the dust has not even been settled for 24 hours here. So in terms of that, I don't know kind of what the core group of us that sit down and work through these things is going to really come up with. I guess worst case scenario, we just start bombarding them at every city council meeting they ever have again. And we try and get 50, 60 people every time during their open comment section at the beginning of the night. And we just waste their time. So they can't get anything else done until they really sit down and take it serious.
Yeah.
To be honest, it doesn't sound like that bad of an idea. I just don't know that you can consistently get 50, 60 people together every time they have a city council meeting to really hammer it home.
Sure.
I don't know that you can do that. And even then, I don't think that they are willing to take the public use off the books. The best you could hope is to get sampling allowed. And just judging by the nature of the people and the manner in which they spoke last night, I would be more inclined to see them bringing the one rent-a-cop in that was there to guard the facility last night to respectfully remove people than I would be to see them backtrack.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, Basil, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you giving us an update on this situation, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah, no sweat. Parting words. I mean, you have to be vigilant because it was my backyard this time. It could be yours next time.
Yeah, that's true.
Absolutely true. Yeah, thanks so much, Basil. We really appreciate you coming on.
All right, have a good night.
Yeah, always a pleasure, guys. Take care.
All right, bye.
Yeah, it's stories like this that we're starting to hear more and more as a ripple effect across the country, and it's something that not just this show of Inside Vaping has spoke of, but many have. Vape Team Media and the VP Live Network. There's been many. Another big to-do this week was at the Westminster, Massachusetts Council hearing. The vapors really showed up in force there, and the meeting was quickly adjourned. we have a video on this as well that we'll play in a moment, so you can see a few snippets of the local news broadcast's interpretation of this type of thing. While the end result here may be perceived as a little less than positive in the mainstream media, the show of opposition was effective enough to make newspapers as far as Seattle, Washington, and even the New York Times take notice. News like this spreading as far as it has is encouraging to vapors at large, at least in my opinion, as it shows the power of simply showing up and voicing opposition to senseless legislation. Let's hope that this event and others to follow force lawmakers to reevaluate some of the ridiculous legislation against e-cigs without due diligence. James, you have that video that news broadcast?
I'll pull that up here. Let me see. So we have Westminster. There we go.
Fuming mad over a push to ban tobacco sales in a tiny Massachusetts town. The rowdy crowd abruptly cut short a meeting on that controversial plan.
It's not stumped out yet, though. News Center 5's John Atwater's live in Westminster tonight with where it goes from here, John.
Well, Heather, it's all up to the Board of Health now, but what they heard tonight was loud and clear. A lot of people want to be able to walk into stores like this and buy tobacco.
All right, this hearing is closed.
Within minutes of starting,
Freedom now!
The Board of Health lost control of the enraged crowd.
They're taking me away!
Police stepped in to control passionate protesters and escort board members to their cars.
You people make me sick.
The abruptly adjourned public hearing drew heated, pointed criticism of a proposal to ban tobacco sales at stores in town.
This meeting with all these cameras here is a mockery of this town in front of the United States of America.
Westminster has found itself in the national spotlight, the first town in the country that is one vote away from taking an unprecedented position on tobacco.
About 21 years in the family.
For Brian Vincent, who runs a store in town, the proposed ban could sink sales.
It's not a $10 pack, it's a $30 total sale.
Our main focus on developing these regulations is the children in our community.
The three-member Board of Health says it's trying to protect kids from new, sweeter tobacco products.
3 people should not dictate a town of 7,000.
But nearly everyone in this crowd feels a ban would limit their freedom. And they used a patriotic song to loudly proclaim their position.
When you start taking away people's rights to consume legal products, they're going to get fired up.
And after that hearing tonight, the Board of Public Health here says no more public hearings. They will still accept letters, and they say they will vote on this proposal sometime after December 1st. We're live in Westminster tonight. John Atwater, WCVB News Center 5.
All right, so Dane, you know, I guess with situations like this, I'm kind of divided because on the one side, I want people to be respectful. I want them to be orderly and try to get their point across. But then again, we're not dealing with people who really see any merit in our arguments.
Yeah, that's pretty clear here, especially at this council hearing. Now, this was clearly slanted more towards tobacco use than smokers, and the room was probably mixed more smokers than it was vapors. But as we vapors know, being lumped into with tobacco products, you know, their fight is still essentially going to be our fight in some small shape or form in city council hearings like this one. I'm not always pro, you know, some of the disobedience there. You know, breaking into God Bless America, while is certainly their right and certainly fun, to me as an advocate standing in front of a legislator doesn't offer a whole lot of substantial weight to argue a point. It's certainly, you know, civil disobedience has its place. We've certainly tried other tactics in the past that have obviously failed in many, many different states. Some have worked, but more often than not, we've come up on the short end. If nothing else, I think this story is, while not negative or positive for me, is important because it shows passion and participation at local municipalities across the country. And I think if we see enough of that, I think we can start to discuss change, because the numbers game changes.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a good point too. And we even touched on it with Basil on the phone there when he was talking about vapors showing up at every council meeting from that point onward,
right,
during that open comment period, just so they could get the point across that we're mobilized, we're highly motivated, and this is something that we want you to actually pay some credence to. And I think that's an important point to get across as well.
Absolutely.
So, that being said, we are running short on time. Unfortunately, we had to drop a couple things from the document here. We are going to continue on Quest Vaping. Neil, unfortunately, we really didn't get to talk to you too much, so we will do that during the after show segment. But before we do that, I am going to go ahead and show a promotional shot here of Guru E-Juice. And how many flavors do you have right now, Neil?
I actually am running 5 right now. I have 1 in beta testing.
Okay. And are they predominantly fruit or bakery or what?
Oh, no. What my main goal was that I wanted an even scale all across the board. So you got 2 RY4s, 2 bakeries, 2 fruits. 6 flavors all together, keep it concise and easy for anybody to want something.
Keep it simple. Yeah, and
Exactly.
I have tried all of the juices, and there's a couple that I like more than others. I like the RY4 quite a lot. That's probably my favorite out of the bunch.
You know, surprisingly, you know what sells is the one I didn't want to release. And I will say right now, Sluice Juice, I did not want to release. I thought it was too simple, too easy, and I thought it was just garbage.
Yeah.
And everybody loves the crap out of it. I'm like, why?
So if you want more information about Neil's juice, please go to www.facebook.com/guruejuice for more information.
Yeah, definitely transparent, James. You know that as well as anybody should know.
Yeah, and you've been doing this for a while now, and I know you take a lot of care and pride in your product, and that really does show.
Yep.
Well, everybody, unfortunately, we are short on time right now. Hopefully you can join us during the after show over on Quest. Obviously, we had a couple technical difficulties tonight as well, but glad that everybody joined us, and we will see you over on Quest.
Yes, I will sign out. I will not be on the after show this evening.
Yes.
I am actually heading out of town tomorrow and need to be in bed sleeping. but
before you go, this is your Vaporversary. So happy Vaporversary to you, Dane.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, it seems like an eternity, and I now that I have the opportunity, I will thank him since he's sitting across the wires from me. The biggest influence on my vaping life has been Ed TheGreen. So I'm going to take this opportunity to publicly thank you for being incredibly patient, almost saint-like, to put up with my moronic, ignorant questions every 2 minutes when I started this, and you were helping me all along the way. I like to think that I have taken the example that Ed has started with me, helping new vapors along that path. And really, when it comes to those types of things, it's really important to help new vapors. And Ed never, ever lost sight of that. And that's what drew me to that Vapors Club that he started. That's what drew me to keep coming back, knowing that there were those types of people in the community to help. And it had more of an impact than you'll ever know. And thank you from the bottom of my heart, because now I've been smoke-free for quite a while, and I am enjoying every bit of it.
That was very sweetly put.
Wow, dude. Okay, you can take me off that pedestal now, please. But no, it's been fun, Dane. It's been fun with you. I love teaching people stuff.
Yeah.
And especially when you have someone that actually takes it in and not like keeps on trying to tell you that you're doing it wrong when you don't know what you're doing. That's my little 5-year-old. She knows.
She challenges you.
Daddy, this is how you do it. I'm like, okay. But no,
boy.
dude, I'm glad I've been here with you the whole way. It's been great.
Yes.
We got a lot more years to go, man. A lot more years to go.
Yes, absolutely. And I will see everyone next week. Enjoy the after show. Enjoy these guys, Ed and James, wealth of knowledge. Use them for every bit of that knowledge. It really does help. It certainly helped me.
All right, Dane, take it easy. And everybody, I will try to put a link to the after show in chat here, but YouTube doesn't like links. I don't know if I have a logo with... I don't think I do. I could actually add it in right here. So why don't we do that? I will go ahead and add it in on our splash screen and play one musical selection for you, and then we will see you over on Quest. So have a good night, everybody.
Yes.
And we'll see you
get the Urban Dictionary out. Hold on.
All right, here we go. So there's your link for the after show, vapors.tv/questvaping, and we will see you guys over there in about 2 minutes.